Ladies and gentlemen, and particularly the African women. It is a great honor to be among you today and to give me a chance to be back to South Africa, a land we love, the land which stands for liberation, the last lag of liberation in Africa, and the land of Mandela, whom we respect and the whole world respects. When I was in the Pan-African Parliament, it was always a pleasure to be in the land of colors, where we have all the colors of the world represented in this nation. My dear colleagues, the introduction does not very well match the person. I am challenged by height, and I think those who are here are more learned than I am. What I know, I have collected it as I was moving. So I was filling in the gaps. And I still have more gaps to fill in what I know. But today, I'm exceptionally happy that we are dealing with a topic close to my heart and a topic in which I have had the experience to gather some of the knowledge. As a woman, what is being discussed in gender is very, very known to me. I've gone through it, part of it. Most men in Africa who are here went to school because their mothers were farmers, unrecognized farmers. And to give special attention to agriculture, which is the main occupation of African women, which you don't need a certificate or a doctorate to go to the farm. So this is where the majority of women are. This is where they are not asked whether you've gone to an agricultural college or not. And those women have maintained this continent. When you talk about food security, they know it better in their languages, not necessarily in English, French, or any other language. But you go to these women, they are the greatest botanists. They're the people who know all the plants around them. In fact, they know the environment more than people who have achieved doctorates from very known universities. I used to look at my late mother and say, look, when I was learning biology in school, but my mother knows all these plants. She knows the uses of these plants. She used to warn us which plants not to touch or use for medicines when we had fever. So she was a great doctor, a great botanist, a great everything. But who remembers her name? She's not among the great people in this world, except me, who I've looked into so many positions, and now I have so many name tags without specialization. May I say the following? If you look at our Africa, the land with so many names, the continent, we started in history with the dark continent. Then we moved on, now we are the poor continent. And you always wonder, where does the African poverty come from? We have everything. So maybe as we address this topic of agriculture, land, I deliberately didn't include in gender. land, agriculture, which is supposed to be the key to development, there's something wrong somewhere. We have all these good policies. The FAO has done a wonderful job on research, on agriculture and problems of land. Our governments have policies on agriculture and on land. We have constitutions and laws. Where have we gone wrong? I think this is what we should ask ourselves as Africans. Where have we gone wrong? I tried to give a short history of Tanzania with the land question, and then I bring in the gender aspect. Before colonization, we have the traditional land tenures, the chiefs, the male human beings were the managers and the owners of the land. And when you get married, even today, most of us, when we got married, were told, now we are marrying you off, you are transferred to another clan. So in fact, it's a transfer from a male management of one clan to another. And in most cases, when you die, that's why for the African woman to bear children is very important, particularly when you have children. You will never go back to your family's land. You will be buried in that land where you were transferred. But you were transferred there without rights. In fact, you were transferred there as a laborer. And this is the situation up to today. Most women in Africa are not farmers. And even if I challenge the FAO, when they celebrate Farmers' Day, they really don't inside mean women. Otherwise, they should have said the Women's Day in the March 8th. That's where we should celebrate the Farmers' Day. So after that transfer, you become a laborer. We are still laborers, most of us. I can't remember in my country, Tanzania, where we have women who own thousands of acres of land. But I can mention even 100 men who've acquired that land. But it's unfortunate, and for those who come from Tanzania, I would say we went wrong because our first president and the first leadership after independence were very clear of what they wanted to do in Tanzania. They nationalized the land. That land belonged to the government by law. And you were given, and the government could use it for any other purpose, but you given lease. And the traditional tenure system was left to help. But those tenure systems, which were sort of subjecting people to servitude, were outlawed. So you could not have the land and put people on that land and they work for you and you give them minimal pay. That was outlawed. And then we had Ujamaa villages, where men and women worked together to produce, to process, to market, and they owned the land jointly regardless of gender. I still feel that was the right way. That was the right way. And I just want to give you a small example. I once attended a ceremony in the village after the harvest when the revenue was being distributed, the money distributed to the villagers. You go there by name. You don't go by Mrs. So-and-so. They call Gertrude Ibengwe. You go to the table, they count. You attended so many days, you are getting so much. That was liberation. But somehow, that's another problem. We diverted from that. We thought that was primitive. And it's us who went to school who did that. It's not the villagers. It's us who have gone to school, who suggested that this is not the right way to go. It's socialism. For me, socialism which liberates women, I don't care even if I'm called a socialist, because that liberates me. But it went to another step. We started liberalizing the land. Now, whom do we blame when everybody is coming in to take land? We must blame ourselves. So, the land is the key to dignity. The land is the key for development. The land is the key for investment. Where do you invest if you don't have land? How can you make a decision on the land you don't own? I began by saying the women don't own land. That's why it's so difficult, whatever program you put in for women, it will never work because the land does not belong to them. They cannot decide on how to use the land. They cannot decide on how to develop that land. And therefore, all other projects and programs which come on for women, they are subject to the decisions of other people. Whether it's the male people within the community, male in the government, male from outside Africa. Because I've been looking at the delegations for negotiations. Mostly are men. So it's the same game, male, 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 up to the international level, making decisions. And now that we have liberalized the land, those people who come in quotes as investors, they are told to go and negotiate with the villagers. They don't, when they go there, they don't go to meet the women. They meet the men. But the ones who till the land are the women. So if we don't deal with those complications, even if we speak about gender equality, participation of women in decision-making, we are wasting our time. How can a rural woman who can barely read and write or has just managed to get primary education go and negotiate with an FAO officer with PhD? They don't match from the beginning. And in fact, they are never on the negotiation table. We are struggling to make women, the number of women increase in decision-making so that they can negotiate. So those are some of the problems I would like to put to the table, that maybe it's the whole African management system of land. If we don't turn it around, we'll not manage. But people can ask me a question, Mama Mongera. That's what I'm called most of the time, Mama Mongera. But you have the laws. You have the constitutions. Fortunately, in Tanzania now, we are going through a process of establish a new constitution. It's 50 years since independence, and we think maybe the child has outgrown the outfit. Although most of the things which are there are still very valid today. We are networking women in Tanzania. At least to put it very clear that the Constitution should outlaw any actions of discrimination. We still have a lot of discrimination in our constitutions. I'll give you an example. I was reading at the draft, and there is a commission on human rights, which is deemed to be established. And you start by saying the chair, the chief justice, the so-and-so, the so-and-so. And I kept on marking male, 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 male. If we get out that constitution that way, the discrimination will be instituted in the constitution. Because the women do not make the appointments of those chief justice, the major general, the chief of police, and so on and so on. They are all male, and it will take time before people change their mindsets. But I would like to see that paragraph changed into saying we'll have maybe 10 members of the commission. 5 will be women and 5 will be men. And they will come from the following disciplines. That would eradicate the discrimination. And you always find in our constitutions, I think in most countries, where we say respect for our traditional and customary laws. Once you respect them in a blanket, that's when you pull back the African woman to be transferred from male domination in one clan to another male-dominated clan and managed, and her agricultural efforts managed by the males who own the land. But I would like to at least to say now where we are going through, we are departing even from the traditional customary laws. We are moving to another point where even the men are being marginalized. So when we talk about gender marginalization in land, it's not only on women now. It's going to the men too. The man who cannot buy chunks of land is going to be a laborer like the woman, maybe a laborer of a higher class than the woman. But men of Africa, if you are not careful, we are all going to be in the same basket of laborers. You will not have land to manage. And that's going to be the worst part of our development in Africa. If we look at the investments, and we look at it from a gender perspective, it is not a dream for an African woman to get access to investments. How do we bring them in to be in part to benefit the investments which are put on the African continent? Now, if the key laborers or the people who produce the rice, the coffee, the cotton, are not part of the process of investment. Is this not a new colonization? I'm sorry, I'm a politician. I'm sorry to speak this way. You are academicians and researchers. I'm not. I'm just imagining, and we're getting into another complication altogether. Here you have land. You have no access to investments. You have no access to technology. And we're going now to another more developed stage of slavery. I'm a history teacher. If you look into slavery, then you find that people were used to till and grow the land. Now we are all being lumped back, history repeating itself in a very different way. That now we are back to slavery where men, women were all slaves. And then I come to politics, which also affects the land and the equality issue. We politicians of Africa, have we looked at our political systems and policies to see that we'll get out of these complications? Apart from the land being taken away by investors, we also have created our own complications of lack of proper policies on land distribution. We are experiencing, for example, in Tanzania, conflict between the farmers and the pastoralists. It's a big problem. And this is because of lack of proper distribution. So land distribution and land policy should deal with the equality. If you don't put in the equality question, which means equality between the pastoralists and the users, I can say in general, the users of land, because the cities are expanding, they need more land, the population is growing, even in villages, there's been more need of more land, and we have industries, factories developing which were not put into the picture. And therefore there will be so many competing forces. The pastoralists, the farmers, we have a competition of the industries, we have the competition of big plantations, and so on and so on. Now, the question of distribution of land, if you have the best policy, that's when even the gender question can come in and can be dealt with, because in that pattern, like the time of Ujamaa, the concept of Ujamaa, where everybody was a person in his or her own right. Now, what are my suggestions when it comes to gender? Let us politicians stop talking about democracy. The democracy being talked now in Africa is democracy. In fact, it's not even in Africa alone. In Africa, it's becoming even better. Because if you see Rwanda, mostly the East African countries and the southern countries, the women are making it to the decision-making tables, if you look at the statistics. But worldwide, we politicians are talking about democracy. What type of democracy without women? I've asked this question since I was leading Beijing conference. I was looking for a country which would come up and say they are totally democratic. You go to our political parties. If you say now we are setting up a high table, those who come and sit on the high table will be invariably all in black suits, except now that the women have tried to emulate the men. But otherwise, all the high leadership in political parties are men. We don't say they're bad, no. But I want to take you, the African women, back during the liberation. The women were on the forefront. After we crossed the river, did we get swallowed up by crocodiles? We have to renegotiate our positions. But now coming to development, if we do not deal with these problems and we deal with them separately, the African continent will never develop its agriculture because it will be talking on one side about the development and marginalizing the farmers. So this is what I want us to put together. That investment should be done in a way that it reaches those people we call the farmers in practical terms. My dear participants, I wouldn't like to take more time from you, but I would like to leave you with the following things to think about. Can we revisit the ownership of land in more practical terms? Can we ensure that the women are the center of the agricultural revolution in Africa? Because they are the willing partners. They've never formed a trade union to protect their rights as laborers, agricultural laborers. Can we deal with the question of discrimination in the ownership of land? Discrimination of both men and women in the ownership of land and decision making. And then, can we then even look at our political systems and see if we are addressing the right questions? And that is a very sensitive question, to look at our political systems, because most of the countries now in Africa, we are looking at what position I'm going to take and not what contribution I'm going to make. Thank you very much.